OMAKASE, the life and words of author M. Kieran. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living, my pronouns are they, them, and welcome to my Writing Advice and Inspiration podcast. If you're unfamiliar with the format of this show, here is how it's gonna go. The first third is all about my week, what I've been up to, what I've been creating, and the media that I've been consuming. The second segment are viewer questions. Every week, I tackle 2 questions sent to my YouTube account, to my Twitter, to my email. I gather them up, I pick 2, and I tackle them before your very eyes. Once again, I've been challenged to revise a piece of advice that I gave at the very beginning of my YouTube channel, and I'll be doing that in the first question. And the second question of the day is going to be about artistic expression. After that, we have the third and final segment of the show, the prompt. Every week, I try to give you a writing exercise to help you think about stories, to open up your mind and imagine something else, to stretch your muscles, your creative muscles, that is, and seek to critically think about stories. Today, we have a weird exercise that may or may not be interconnected to one of the questions of the day. Before we jump into my week, there's 3 little items of housekeeping I gotta let you know about, okay? The first is that the song that you hear at the beginning and at the end of the show is titled Dream of Green by the OC Jazz Collective. Also, there's a bunch of handy little links in the description of this video/podcast. You can find places to support me, as well as the YouTube playlist, and how you can even find me on Spotify. And the last thing, as reminded by my lovely spouse, is that I have to remind you that if you really, really like this podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star rating on iTunes. It would mean the world to me. Reviews are the number one way in which the podcast can grow long term. So if you really, really like the podcast, consider leaving a 5-star rating and or a review. All right. All of that stuff out of the way, let us begin in proper. Hi there. My week has been a little silly. It's been a good week. I feel like that's something that I gotta clear up, because sometimes a week can be odd, can be strange, in a bad way. We can fall victim to calamity, to the random encounters of life. That can happen sometimes. As a matter of fact, I fell victim to one of those this week. But overall, looking back on the time between now and the last time I sat down to record a podcast, it wasn't that bad. I have been working this week mostly on items on my list of monthly tasks that I need to do regarding the Patreon page and, of course, the podcast and the channel. Every month I do a writing zine, a little writing zine, where I usually, for the last couple of months, I've been tackling a weird story idea from different points of view. If you follow me on Patreon, you know that the last couple of months, the scene has been, I don't want to say a problem, but I had, every step along the way, I've had difficulties with the printing company that I was using, and so, just, I want you to understand, guys, I'm not gonna rant, I promise, but I spent probably 4 weeks just trying to print 1 volume of the scene, with no success. To no fault of my own. That's a good random encounter of life right there. Spend the next 4 weeks trying to finish 1 project. I make it sound very dramatic. It's not. This week, I grabbed all of my notes, and I completed volumes 14 and 15 of the scene. And I was looking forward to them, because working on the scene is a really interesting monthly project for me. The scene is small. It's 8 pages, and I like to have the scene be a cohesive story. Like volumes 13, 14, and 15 have been these almost short stories where you can add and remove your own little details so that you can imagine your own version of the story. I hope that makes sense. I've had a lot of fun working on the zine, and this week I worked on 2 volumes, and their volume 14 and 15 are basically 2 halves of the same story, and I really liked how they were executed. I am not 100% happy with volume 14, but volume 15 is so good. I am so proud of how that one came out. It's just, I feel like I nailed it. You know, volume 14 has like a couple of shortcomings that I had to come to terms with for the concept of the story. But volume 15, I really like. It's just such a max prompt. So I feel like I have to give you more background because I'm just geeking out about having fun creating a thing. Wait a minute. Hold up. Where's my phone? I'm keeping all this in. I just realized something. Oh my god, am I a mastermind? Okay, this is gonna go up to patrons like around the 25th. It goes public on the 1st of March. Oh my god. This podcast is gonna go live on the 1st of March, a day before my birthday. But more importantly, in the month... Oh my god, I can't believe this worked out. In the month of March, starting on March, I'm gonna be releasing legacy volumes of the zine. And by what I mean legacy is that every month I'm gonna release an old volume of the zine, starting with volume 1. So people who have been supporting me, the patrons who are pledging on the zine tier, are basically 15 volumes in advance. I have been preparing for this for the longest time, and looking back on it, my writing zine has changed so much. It's okay. I don't have any details set in stone just yet. I think I might be. I think I will be releasing the zine on Itch.io. I think that's where I'm gonna be putting it. I don't know if I'm gonna put it on Amazon. It seems like an awful lot of trouble. But I think I am gonna put it on Itch.io, and probably the first 3 months, the first 3 volumes of the legacy zine are most likely gonna be free / donate whatever you want. Mostly because I am not very happy with those first 3 volumes. I remember, and this goes to show how time helps you redefine your art, or just time helps you improve. I had never made a zine ever in my life. And for volume 1, I made the entirety of it by hand. I drew everything by hand. I still have the original prototype for the zine, where it is the same sheet of paper that I drew everything on. I did it by hand. I scanned it into a computer scanner. It's the silliest thing. I put so much work into it, and ultimately, I don't think it was that good of a zine. From volume 2 onwards, I actually started just making it on Clip Studio, just making it on the computer. Turns out that's way easier. I started focusing less on gimmicks and more on just delivering the best experience. And looking back on it, volumes 1, 2, and 3 are me trying to find my voice. I try to do a lot of things. I try to have the zine be inspiration and prompts and advice, and I have a lot of that. I think even volume 4 still has a bit of that. The way in which I remember, by the way, is that all the volumes had names to them. I believe volume 3 was Black Elixir Days. Volume 4 was Disc Image, I think. I think it was. You know what? This segment is already weird enough as it is. Let me just find it. I'm working at the computer. Maxine, Volume 2. Volume 2 is Maxine. Yeah, it's still Maxine. Volume 3... Wait, no. Volume 3 is Maxine. Then what's Volume 2? What's Volume 2 of the zine? No, that is Maxine. What? I put it in the wrong box. Oh, Black Elixir Days is Volume 3. Volume 4 is... Volume 4... Oh, Volume 4 is Disc Image. That's what I thought. Yeah, it's Disc Image. Volume 5 of the zine... Did I give it a name? No, that one's just V. Okay. V as in the Roman numeral for 5. What's Volume 6 of the zine? I think I remember this. Back to Nature? It's Back to Nature, isn't it? Also, that sound you hear in the background are my chinchillas. They're awake now. I'm recording really early. Which may be funny, because you're like, aren't chinchillas supposed to be nocturnal? Yeah, but I mean, life surprises all of us. Yeah, Volume 6 is Back to Nature, and Back to Nature is so good! Not Back to Nature, the video game. Back to Nature, my zine. That one's really good, because I made it all about a small town, and all of the prompts are like rumors, and they're all on different kinds of paper. Yeah, I remember that! That's a good scene. That's a good scene. And Volume 7, I remember this one. Volume 7 is when we become gods. That's yeah, right? It's when we become gods. When we become gods. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, that's all about like demons and angels and all that stuff. See, that's not the joy that I feel looking back on Volumes 1, 2, and 3 of the zine. I'm really looking for my voice, and I found it. Like, the production value of the scene is like has skyrocketed since Volume 1. Volume 1, I hand drew the cover with an Energel pen, and volumes like 14 and 15, I made them with an aesthetic choice, so that they would both feel as though they're two halves of the same story. And I think I posted the cover for Volume 14. Volume 14 is titled Prediction Engine, and Volume 15 is titled Utopia. And they're so cool! Part of the thing that whenever I do visual design for my novels and stuff, I want it to look cool. It has to look interesting. And I committed to the most anime aesthetic for Utopia. I committed to it. I did the most anime thing for the cover, and I love the way that it looks. It's so... And remember, one of my viewers and patrons, longtime follower, Lishadra, was pointing out that the cover for Prediction Engine looks like some old novel, and that's on purpose. I don't know how I got lost talking about the zine. I haven't talked about it in forever, mostly because I haven't found a good chance to talk about it. The zine has become this nice little space for me to just experiment with weird story ideas and just throw them at you. Especially volumes like 12, 13, 14, and 15. At the beginning of the month, I gather my ideas for what I want to do with the scene, and I start experimenting. I do a lot of different tests, and when I find the aesthetic, because you gotta have an aesthetic for a scene, and when I find the aesthetic, we're good to go. That's all I need. And I mean, by the time this goes up, like, volumes 14 and 15 will already have shipped, so I guess I can tell you my creative process working on those two. I wanted 14 and 15 to be two halves of the same story, and they both revolve around a machine, a sentient, sapient machine able to predict the future. And kind of the trick is that the story, the prompts and the way it is portrayed, it sets the story from the point of view of the prediction engine, and that right there. Chef's kiss. It's fantastic. And I will make sure to do this when I re-release the zines. But like, whatever story ideas are out there, they're just, free to whoever wants to take them. I may actually put the copyright Creative Commons with no attribution thing. I hope that's the right one. I may actually just put that, I'll add an additional page that just has that. So if anybody wants to write about Utopia, they can do that. But yeah, no, the scene has been this really, really fun experience, and it was hard this week, but I had fun. At least I had that nice comfort of just opening up the zine and creating the 7 different parts of this story. And the most fun part, whenever I'm making a prompt, whenever I'm creating a story idea, is to find all the different angles that you can twist. I had the most fun at every single turn, and those of you who were pledging to the scene tier, you have already gotten the digital version and you already know, but at every single turn, I left something in there. I left a little unanswered question, a little term here and there. What does this mean? What does that imply for you to play with? Because all it takes is one thing for you to be able to twist this into something completely different. And that's the fun right there. It's like creating a puzzle. I'm the kind of person, I love puzzle games, but I have no idea how people come up with them. I have no idea how someone can come up with, 300 puzzles for The Witness. But I guess maybe it's kind of like this. I guess since I'm pre-programmed to find story ideas everywhere, I can find them without thinking. I can find ways to twist them without thinking. Maybe that's how someone can come up with so many puzzles. Maybe. I didn't want to go super long on this, but I guess I did. The one random encounter of life that happened this week is that I was halfway through recording the monthly video for February. The monthly video for February/March, and the power went out halfway. That video was so good. It was some of my best work. I was doing the thing where I was being inspirational. I was speaking from the heart, and the power went out. And I lost the entire file. I was so mad. But it's fine. I'm gonna re-record it today, get it all done, release it to the patrons. All's good. No biggie. I've been having fun with the zine. I've been having fun making these tiny little books. Especially the last few volumes, where they have been these ridiculous, crazy stories. And you know me. It's gotta be weird. It's gotta be bizarre. It has to be something you could have never imagined. And that's what I love. Bringing you something a little weird. Also, one more thing, because I know that I'm going long. One of the things that I always did, when I began the zine, and I've been maintaining it every time, is that I like to look at the scene almost like a booster pack for like a trading card game. And they give you the list, right? Of like every scene comes with 6 prompts, a nice introduction-y sequence, and a picture of my cat. And the hardest part of the zine has been finding ways to explain in world why there's a picture of a cat in this zine. I know that sounds silly, and I know what you're thinking. Some of you are like, Max, just put the cat picture in there. Everybody loves cats. What's the big deal? But to me, to Crazy Max over here, it has to make sense for the world. It has to make sense. And I found the saddest, most heartbreaking way for volume 15. It's so good. It's so good how it came out. Man. Volumes 13, 14, and 15, I have managed to find a wrinkle, a little way in which I can sneak the cat picture into the scene, and it makes sense thematically. Some of you didn't even notice it for volume 13, which is just hilarious for me. But anyhow, I'm looking forward to releasing the zine. I'm gonna have to be really humble for the first 3 months, because those first 3 volumes are not very good. But you know what? That's fine. I will make do. I will survive. And we will move on to the next segment of the show. Did you know? This podcast is brought to you thanks to you, the lovely people, treating me to cups of coffee on coffee.com/mkaren and supporting me through patreon.com/mkaren. If you feel inspired to supporting me and helping me create more, pledging $1 to my Patreon page gets you early access to this podcast and a bunch of other cool things. I want to give a second to talk about some of my most generous patrons, starting with Hero Song. Hero Song is writing LGBT plus positive novels. You can find their work on smashwords.com. Just do a quick search for Hero Song. Rival Moonlight does not only have a really cool name, he also has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about his writing and his art over at deviantart.com/Rival Moonlight. And here are some more of my amazingly generous patrons. Somuse, Lishadra, Lacey, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Angela, Polly Craftwell, Amelia, Elisa Dudley, Heather is writing, Nicola, Brenda, Pat Eichson, Kristen Lofton, and Synexia. Hey guys. Thank you so much for your support. Look at me now. Look at me. I wanted my segment of the week to be short, but then I spent 20 minutes geeking out about my zine. That's what happens. Also, I absolutely did not mean those two to work out. I thought I had one more week. February is so darn short. I hate it. I hate how short February is. I'm gonna have to spend like a whole week just making podcasts so that I can catch up and get back to writing. But anyhow, talking about writing, I had a dear viewer comment on one of my oldest videos. Don't go watch it. Please don't. I don't have the heart to go watch those videos. Please don't. Don't do this to me. But one of my viewers went back and watched some of my oldest content. I don't know how you got there. There's like 69 parts of Final Fantasy IX. I don't know how you got there, but you know what? You did. And they wanted me to review my tips. They challenged me. Okay, they actually didn't challenge me. They just wanted me to review if that's how I really still felt. But I'm taking it very personally. I feel like I'm feeling like I'm getting called out. I feel like I'm getting called out. I feel like someone is like, "Hey Max, the version of you from like 5 years ago said this. Do you still feel the same way?" So let's talk about it. Let's talk about my cure for writer's block. Back in the day, in the earliest years of my YouTube channel, I made a video with a nice slideshow. I'm pretty sure those slides were like, they were not 1280 by 720 resolution, but you know what? It's fine. Don't go look it up. Don't you dare. I hate the fact that just by me saying that, someone's gonna go look it up. But you know what? That's life. That's what happens. In that video, I recommended that if you ever don't know what to do, if you ever really don't know what to write about next, if you are stumped, if you're facing the writer's block, I recommended that what you should do is take a second and imagine the worst possible thing that could happen to your character at that very moment, and then write it. And that was it. That was a piece of advice. It was a really quick video, being entirely honest. Thank God I don't do that anymore. Y'all know I sure love a long-winded over-explanation of a very simple concept. How do I feel about that piece of advice? Looking back on it, I know it was coming from a good place. But I also realize that I might have possibly given you a one-size-fits-all solution without really extrapolating more on it. It might also be the fault of making a really short video for the sake of making a really short video. That's why I would very much rather be long-winded and over-explain and re-revise what I said so that at least I feel that I did my due diligence and that I told you everything truthfully. How do I feel about that piece of advice, looking back on it? Honestly, I don't think it's that bad. The only thing, I would add a slight revision to it, and I would also add a little clarification. So my piece of advice would be, if you are having writer's block, I would say, and you don't know what to write about next, you have no clue, you have no idea, the outline's gone, it's out the window, it's been gone forever, you don't know what to do next. Imagine what the worst possible thing that could happen to your character is, asterisk, that would make sense for the story you have established so far, and then write it. That would be my addition, a little asterisk. Now, allow me to extrapolate, because I also want to make a clarification. Not just the addition, but also a clarification. The clarification part comes in this form. I failed to notice the possibilities of multiple points of view in this question. Max from the past, a very young version of me, overlooked the reality that the worst possible thing to me is not the worst possible thing to you. And I think that I meant it to be that way, but I realize the shortcomings of that now. If you really don't know what to do, I don't think, and hold up, I don't think there's anything wrong with having calamity strike, as long as it makes sense for the story you established. Because when I think Okay, you know what? I have to do a scenario. I have been itching. My birthday's coming up, and I may splurge a little and purchase a new board game. I've been thinking a lot about the board game Dead of Winter. Just thinking about that game is getting me the desire to write my own twist on a zombie story. I was staying up last night just thinking about that board game. That's how much of a nerd I am. But anyhow, so let's imagine a zombie story. The kind of zombie story where survivors are holed up in a building, there are zomboids everywhere, things are bad. The S has hit the F. The S has hit the F, and everything's bad. Now, in this particular story, everyone would imagine a different worst possible scenario. Now, when I mean a worst possible scenario, I could imagine something like, well, the main character's best friend goes out to scavenge and doesn't come back. That's one thing. But someone else might be like, okay, well, suddenly a meteorite hits, the world. And I know that sounds a little bit like an oxymoron, but I want you to understand that I didn't clarify that. I didn't clarify the context. Because when you just imagine horrible things happening, it's like, okay, well, a character suddenly dies. A character suddenly gets a heart attack. Or a terrible catastrophe just falls upon the survivors. And that's not really what I meant. Looking back on it, I realized that what I really meant was calamities that make sense for what you have established so far. We talked about this, I think, last week on convenience and inconvenience. And what this piece of advice boils down to is to have inconvenience things show up that make sense. Now, someone out there, someone who listened to last week's episode, I think, is saying, but Max, you didn't establish that inconvenient thing happening. How can you write about it? And I'm gonna bring you a little close, okay? I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, okay? It's the first draft. It doesn't have to connect yet. You will make it connect during revision. The caveat, the little asterisk that I added, that it has to make sense based on what you have established before, or it has to make sense for the story you're writing, is just to make your future self, to make their work a little easier, but you don't have to. I know that I made the example of an asteroid, of a meteorite falling on the Earth as a kind of ridiculous example, but, I mean, you could actually do that. You would just have to go back and revise it and make sure that it works. And I am such a terrible person. Because I'm imagining that now, and I'm imagining that twist. What if halfway through the book, a meteorite drops? You think this is just going to be a normal story about zombies? And then, or an everyday story about zombies. And then a meteorite falls, and then, whatever was coming on that meteorite, or whatever radiation's in there, changes the world. Oh, ho, 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 ho. I'm getting the chills now. I'm getting the creative chills, the little tingles on my face. I'm imagining. Ooh, that's ooh. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you. You know what? Forget this question. I'm gonna just forget that question. I just tossed my notebook backwards. Okay. I don't know. You know what? Impromptu prompt. Okay. How would you make that plot twist work? How would you make the plot twist of a zombie apocalypse, survivors holed up in a building, zombies everywhere, meteorite falls? How does it change the world? Because I immediately thought of a different plot twist. I immediately thought, I don't know what you would do. I want you to stretch your creative muscles. Preemptively. A preemptive, impromptu prompt. I almost like the idea of whatever radiation is in that meteorite causes the world to become lush again. I love the idea of a lush, bright green, beautiful world full of all these oversaturated colors, full of zombies. Because in zombie fiction, you usually have the dark and dreary kind of aesthetic to it. Lots of browns, lots of grays, everything looks like it's... The mood in the background is like you just broke up with someone. It's dark and dreary and it's just about to rain. That's what the zombie apocalypse looks like in my head. So I love the idea of like an oversaturated wasteland. There's trees and fields of grass with flowers and it looks beautiful and lush. I kind of love that aesthetic. Because it's not what you would expect. But what would you do? Take a second to think about it. While I go back to grab my notebook. With all my notes in it. Where is it? Here it is. Alright, well, that's how you know. I like to make this podcast by feeling. I like to I don't want to say I like to wing it, but I like to just do it by feeling. I love the idea of a impromptu prompt. Anyhow, what was I talking about? Writer's block! How do I feel about that old piece of advice? I think that Macs from the past had their feelings in the right place, but I see the shortcomings, even with my own advice. I don't ever want to give you the idea that I have all the answers. I was thinking of a way of following that sentence. I was gonna say, I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of experience. But even then, that doesn't equate to me knowing more than you. You have to find your own answers, find what works for you. Because I haven't spent these last, 9 years trying to have all the answers. I've just been taking in all this information, all the advice from people around me, from all the years I spent in college just studying creative writing, just absorbing everything, what worked for other people, and inspecting what didn't work for them, and to see if it could work for me. That has been the way that I've always tackled things. And I do realize that I gave you a one-size-fits-all back then when I made that video. If you are stumped, if you don't know what to do anymore, if you look over your outline and you realize that map is not gonna work anymore, that's fine. You're not a failure. The outline getting thrown out the window is common practice. Do not feel bad. Sometimes my outline gets tossed out the window on page 1. And that's what happens sometimes. That's what happens. It doesn't make you a bad writer. Writing is the act of discovery. And sometimes you think you're going to go one place. You think that experience is going to be one way. But as soon as you set out for that journey, as soon as you show up at that place, as soon as you look around you realize this map is not going to do. You might just have to wing it. So if you're not sure what to do, I do recommend enabling calamity to strike, especially if you have a story that's starting kind of slow, or a story where not a lot of things have happened at the beginning. You may be doing a lot of establishing things, and you can have minor calamities strike. A friend going missing, some kind of unfortunate thing happening to your character, as long as it makes sense for the story. I don't want you to go back and add the foundations right now, because you get to do that during revision. And there will always be time to revise, and you will always revise your story. So you might as well just keep putting one foot in front of the other, one word after another, and keep on writing. Okay? Okay. Wasn't that a Max answer or what? My birthday is on March 2nd, by the way. My wife has been taunting me that she's gonna, put up an Amazon wish list with all the things I want. I say that as though I want a lot of things. I really just want that one board game. I've always been terrible with presents. Mostly because when I was young, my family and I lived in relative poverty in Mexico. I didn't realize how bad we had it until I realized how bad we had it. When you're a kid, the experience you have appears to be normal. Oh man, the realness is creeping in, I worked at my dad's workshop. My dad was a jewelry maker, and I would do things like setting stone, cleaning rings, all that stuff. And we lived in relative poverty, so I never really asked for much. Mostly because I thought kids were not supposed to ask for much. So that programming still lingers with me, even now that I am an old person. I still behave in the ways that I was programmed when I was just a baby. That's the way it works, though. By the way, here comes some real life advice, okay, you ready? You are your own person. You are a living being. And if you realize that part of the programming that you were given by your parents, by your progenitors, by those who came before you, and those who lingered in your life but for only a flash of a second, you need not carry that programming with you. It is very easy to spend your whole life behaving according to the programming of people who ultimately did not care much for you. I have friends and family, the people dearest in my life, and we still realize from time to time that we behave according to the worst of all programming. Someone told you a thing about yourself. Someone said a cruel thing about you, and you have built yourself around that thing for decades, and that can stop if you wish it to. Oh, I can get very real. Okay, I have a friend who never would do her hair in a particular way, even though everyone thought she looked really cute doing her hair in a particular way. And through talking with her about it, we discovered that she didn't do that because an old relative was very mean to her, telling her that she looked very ugly with a particular hairstyle, which is baffling because as someone who, as a group of nerds who know about, things that look good, just looking at her facial structure and like her style of hair, parting her hair that way made her look stunning. So, just goes to show, programming. Spent her whole life, her hair in a way that did not benefit her facial structure. Could it be? Is it the Mr. Yanto? Hey everybody! My cat's here! Hey Yanto, you want to say hi to the viewers, Yanto? Alright. A part of me wants to apologize for the aimless? That's not true. I've been pretty aimed today. I just realized I was talking about programming, and I wanted to just get that under the door, because it's one of those big lessons that I wish I had picked up way earlier in my life. Just being able to realize, hey, I don't have to be this way, Stuff like that is very important. Because you can spend your whole life thinking that what someone told you once when you were little is absolute truth. If anything, that may be one of the core values that I always try to bring into my writing advice. This is not objective fact. It is my opinion, what's worked for me in the past, my experience. And part of being a writer is for you to figure out what works for you. What makes writing work for you. I always like to go back to Stephen King's writing advice novel on writing. It's also part memoir, and he talks about the writer's toolbox and how everybody has different things in their toolbox. Grammar, the rules of English, but there's also a lot of advice in there. How you tackle a problematic character, how you develop characters yourself, how you experiment with story ideas, outlining, all those things are contained there. And I don't want your toolbox to be my toolbox. Take what I say, search for the meaning, take it apart, make it work for you. And if it really works for you, let me know, because I am always open to seeing how other people do things. Alright. The more you know. Anyhow, I've been really nice and sweet, but it is time to bring out confrontational Max with the second question of the day. A dear viewer sent me a question, and it's a question that I hate talking about. Mostly because this is the one where I can't find the consensus. There doesn't have to be a consensus, but it's the sort of thing where I say it and then half the crowd agrees with me, half the crowd disagrees with me. So, remember, the following is my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Let's talk about creative expression, artistic expression, and the worst part of it. A dear writerly friend reached out to me and wanted my point of view, my thoughts on creative, artistic expression as an excuse for bad writing. I usually get I usually get comments like this on YouTube all the time. Whenever I'm talking about, story structure, setting up things, I sometimes get people saying, well, what if it's part of the author's vision to not establish anything and to just have random things happen in the story? Oh, I'm already mad. I'm already mad and we haven't even begun. How do I feel about that? How do I feel about the creative, artistic expression, the vision? I really dislike it as an excuse. And, we're gonna go on a long journey. I can feel it. I can feel where we're gonna go. So let's go. The creative license, the artistic expression, you have those by default. Simply creating anything means that you're using that. You're acting on it. There is no requirements for you to write about anything in particular. You can write about whatever you want, and thus you're always acting on your creative license and artistic expression. I encountered this so much in college. I encountered it so many times when someone would write something and it would be a surreal piece of writing. And that's not bad. If you have read my stuff, you know I do surreal stuff all the time. But it would be surreal stuff with very little substance. It would be seemingly unrelated events happening for seemingly no good reason, with no explanation, no payoff, nothing. It wasn't that the questions weren't answered, it's just there were no questions to begin with. And, you're taking a creative writing class where everyone's got a novel, and we are required by the class to give you feedback on your writing. And I would sometimes get people saying that, well, the story doesn't have to make sense because it's their creative artistic expression. Which, yes, you are allowed to write about whatever you want to write about. I cannot stop you. And I wouldn't want to stop you anyway to begin with. You are free to write about whatever inspires you. And honestly, the world needs more stories. So I would very much rather you keep writing than not keep writing. But my one thing is this. Every time this topic comes up, I get people in the comments telling me that I come off as kind of cold, factual, mechanical. And it couldn't be farther from the truth because I don't hold the rules of grammar as the be-all end-all to writing. If you have read my writing, you know I love me some fragments. But the thing is this. Whenever I think about storytelling, I don't think about grammar. I think about story structure. I think about setting things up, about payoff, about character development, about satisfying conclusions. To me, that's what matters the most in writing. I want whoever's reading my content to come out of it feeling good, that they experienced something, or if anything, that I was good company to them during the time they chose to spend with me. You may be catching some... I realize that's literally what I say at the end of every podcast. And the thing that bothers me, and from my point of view, what the real problem here is it's an issue of perception. Because whenever I hear this excuse that, well, that was the author's vision, so you can't complain about it, or that's the author's vision, so there's nothing wrong with it, my thing is this. I don't think that when it comes to storytelling, to fiction, regardless of the medium, you don't have to pick between substance and art. You don't have to pick between effective storytelling and imaginative storytelling. These are not points on a graph and you have to pick one or the other. These are two circles of a Venn diagram. The goal of storytelling is to be imaginative and effective. The middle of that Venn diagram. That is the goal of writing. Especially for books, because this is the storytelling medium, the narrative medium. It's all about the story. But the story is not just one thing or two things. It's a myriad of things. And when we narrow our eyes and only find two elements in there, the artistic expression and the mechanical effectiveness of the writing, I feel like we're doing the medium a disservice, because it's not about picking one over the other. A mechanically effective story over an artistically imaginative story. The goal is to marry both of those things. To fall somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram. I remember, I've had arguments like this with my friends forever. A friend and I were arguing about a very particular kind of media. Should I just name it? It's the most Max thing. It's the most Max thing. You know what? I'll name it. When I was young, I played a video game titled Killer 7. I did not like that game. I had no fun playing it. But I beat it until the end because I wanted to see how the story would end. This game is over 10 years old, so here comes the spoiler. It's not very good. It has cool visuals, interesting characters, an amazing concept of a person who happens to be 7 individual different killers. But the story stumbles at every step of the way. And I had an argument with a friend recently, and we were both arguing about whether that game was good or not, whether the story was effective or not. And their argument was always, well, it's not about the story, it's about the imaginative nature of it, the creative expression. It's art, you can't judge it by its story. I'm mad, I'm so mad. I also realized that I'm basically dunking on a friend off screen, but it's fine. In a little bit, I'm gonna talk about one of my dear friends, and I'm gonna boast about them instead of dunking on a friend for once. Okay, that's a joke. I never dunk on my friends. Also, I love them all. They know I love them. They know this is all in good faith. But, like, the idea that, like, this game is about art, is not about story. I dislike that. Because it's about both things. The goal is not just to have one or the other, it's to do both. To be imaginative and creative, and to have your artistic expression in a way that makes sense and creates a satisfying story. Both are the goal, not just one. I believe in artistic expression. I believe in the creative license. And I always give whoever I'm reading, whoever movie I'm watching, whatever show I'm watching, whatever game I'm playing, I always give the creators their license. And I believe in them until they prove to me otherwise. Sometimes I emerge from their media inspired, sometimes I emerge disappointed. I always give you the benefit of the doubt. The day that comes when I read your novel, I will give you the benefit of the doubt. But if I come out of it and I was unsatisfied, if you didn't establish things, if convenient things kept happening to your characters for no reason, if the ending comes out of nowhere, if there is no satisfaction, if the character never changed, I will come out of it unsatisfied. It's not about just the creative expression. It's also about making the story effective. You can have both. You can have an imaginative story with a crazy storytelling method. You can make them both work. That right there is the ideal. The center of that Venn diagram. An imaginative, creative story told effectively. That right there is the goal. Is it impossible? I don't think so. There isn't a single cell in my body that believes that goal is unachievable. You can be imaginative and tell an effective story. Really, coming back to the beginning, there is a red flag. Whenever I have this argument with a friend or with someone on YouTube, because that happens, I think the red flag is when artistic expression and creativity and the creative license are brought up as the excuse or the justification as to why a story is immune to criticism. And that right there's the red flag. Mostly because no story is ever free of criticism. We must be able to analyze media. We must be able to question stories. Not only as the consumers of those stories, but also as fellow creators. Now, I know that I've gone super long today, but I want to talk about my friend Charles for a second. My friend Charlie Arlett on Twitter, is writing a very interesting novel right now. And they let me see the beginning of it. I had given them feedback on their work before, and I was excited to get to see this new beginning. There is a surreal twist that happens mechanically through the narration that just blew me away. The kind of thing, and I don't want to talk about it to spoil it, but let's just say that the narration smoothly, carefully, delightfully shifted without me realizing it. I am the copy editor. I am the person who picks over details. And I got lost reading that first chapter. I got lost in the story. In the good way. I was in there. I was devouring the narration. And I didn't realize when the narration shifted. There was such a natural, surreal shift in the narration. A shift from one perspective to another. To a joint perspective. This surreal element to it. A fantastical thing that I didn't catch. I was so submerged in the storytelling of that first chapter, I didn't notice it. And when I did, I realized that I had passed it by several pages. The shift in the narration was so well told. I didn't catch it. And I was pages after that. And I was in. I got it. Creative, imaginative expression needs not stand on its own. You can marry it with effective storytelling. My friend Charles pulled an amazing example of that. It blew me away. I came out of that first chapter wanting to read more. Just because that tiny little shift, a shift in the narration that I didn't catch at first, it wasn't until several pages later that I was like, wait a minute, the narration is doing this now. It was good. You don't have to pick between a mechanical story and an artistic one. You can have both. That's the goal. Anyhow. Hey, Charles, you did really good. You did fantastic. That opening chapter is really good. See? I'm not always just dunking on my friends. Anyhow, hey guys, this episode has gone on for way too long. But let's move over to the real prompt, okay? As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm leaning forward. I'm taking this very relaxed stance because we're going to talk about the prompt. And this is the part of the show where I like to give you a weird, crazy writing exercise or some sort of question, a concept, an idea to make you think about storytelling, to make you flex those creative muscles. And I had an idea, but I honestly want to go back to the first question. I know I already gave you an impromptu prompt, but I think I want to analyze that again. I want you to take the story you're currently working on right now. And I want you to follow along with me. Imagine this as though we're going to go on a trip. And you're asking me, Max, what should I pack? And I'm telling you, okay, pack your current novel. And that's it. Put that in your backpack, come with me, let's go. and we're walking around. I'm imagining like a side-scrolling thing. We're walking. There's a bunch of us. All of you listening, you're in the trip too. And I want us to imagine calamity, chaos, catastrophe, other bad words that start with the letter C. Look at your story. That sound in the background is the chinchillas drinking water, by the way. Imagine your story, and I want you to consider the question. What is the worst possible thing that could happen to your story? We're going to do a couple of reps. We're going to look at this from different points of view. So I want you to first take your story and imagine the worst possible thing. If you don't currently have a story at the moment, come on, you gotta have a story around you somewhere. Alternatively, you're free to take that zombie idea that I was tossing around, or whatever other story that I've brought up in the past. If you're binge watching these episodes, hey there. Just, you do whatever you want to do. But I want you to imagine the worst possible thing. Capital WORST. The worst. We're going to be flexing in different directions. We're going to be stretching, doing different magnitudes of the exercise. So let's begin with the hardest, the harshest, the worst. I'm going to give you those nice little pauses. I want you to imagine, what is the worst possible thing that could happen in that story? The worst possible thing. The kind of thing that would end the story right now. Yeah, we're going there. The worst thing. What would end the story right now? You're good? You're holding it in your mind? You got it? I almost imagine as though a crystal ball manifesting itself in your hand. You got it? You got this idea? This thread of another reality. I want you to look at it. This here is the worst possible outcome. The turn in the wheel of fate that brings an immediate, swift end to your story. To that character's story. To their quest, to their mission. It ends like that. Over. How many of you found yourselves calling upon death? How many of you found that death would be the thing that would end your character's journey? What about a giant catastrophe? What about a disaster? What about some unseen threat? What about the antagonist finally getting their stuff together and launching an attack instead of just waiting atop of their crystal tower? It's an idea. The worst possible thing. I really, really like to think about that sometimes. Not in that sort of, my anxiety getting in the way of my creativity, but rather imagining this world and seeing how could things get really, 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 really bad. Sometimes that's the inspiration for entire stories. Sometimes I have a story begin right after that moment, or right at that moment. This is also a very good exercise for coming up with story ideas. Or if you have a story idea and you're like, this is good, but it's not too good, just have the story begin right after or right at the worst possible thing. Now take that, put it in your backpack, think about it, it's yours to keep. You just found yourself a story idea. Because what would happen afterwards? If some horrible thing happens and the story ends right there, who would take over the story? Would you suddenly write it from the antagonist's point of view? Would there be anyone left to tell that story? Who would follow that ending? Because remember, stories go on. Life goes on. Remember. Now let's try a lesser degree of magnitude. I want you to imagine the worst possible thing. By the way, you are not allowed to, whatever you imagined for the first answer, you're not allowed to use any of it. We're limiting ourselves here. You're not allowed to use any other of those things. So if you decided to have the antagonist launching a final attack against the forces of good, with all of their forces and all, and all of their big armies and all that stuff, so you can't do that now. You have burned that bridge. What's the worst possible thing that could happen to your character that would still allow the story to continue? What is the worst possible thing that could happen that would still allow the story to continue? It could still be death. It could still be the loss of the entire league of allies your character has had. And now they're alone, facing off against the evil king in his crystal tower. Maybe. Maybe is the loss of one particular friend. Maybe it is some sort of bodily cost that a battle demands upon the characters. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is a realization. A twist of characters. A knife in the dark. A droplet of poison. What is the worst thing that could happen that would still allow your story to move on? I want you to imagine your story as that path. The path we're walking right now, you and I. And in the first prompt, we were basically creating a cliff face. A wall, some sort of unsurmountable obstacle. And the story ends right there. For this one, we want an obstacle that is great, but would still allow the characters to move. Whether it is around it, under it, or through some other kind of means, overcome this obstacle. Stories visit this kind of concept a lot. A calamity that is great and powerful, and it hinders our characters, but it does not bring an end to their journey. I do find that calamity like this can be kind of the sweet spot, because you don't want the story to end. And I do realize that one of the shortcomings of my advice is that the worst possible thing that could happen often leads to characters dying, because death is very final. But I want to inspire you to not look at death as the only way in which a story can become interesting, in which the stakes can rise, in which obstacles can appear before our characters. There's more ways than that. Let's do one more. You have lifted the end of the world. You have lifted a great disaster. Let's focus even more. I want you to imagine the worst possible thing that could happen to your character that still allows the story to go on, but that shatters the current status quo. A problem, a situation, something that comes up, and although it doesn't end the story, it itself is a great obstacle. The kind of obstacle that you can look upon and realize, okay, we can overcome this, but it will come at many a cost. The difference between the previous one and this one is that the previous obstacle was great. It was enormous. The story can still go on, but it's dire. There is something to be said for that line, the difference between the kind of gargantuan task that you know might be undoable. But if you are on some sort of mission to save the world, you have to attempt. Versus the kind of obstacle that really gets in the way, but it's not big enough to inspire that kind of sacrifice. This here is the dirty, the nasty kind of obstacles. The kind of obstacles over which the party argues. Well, if we can't go this way, we must go that way, or that way. But if we go that way, we have this problem, and we have to deal with that, and with that. And the party argues. A character feels torn. This has gone wrong. It's not world-ending. It's not life-threatening. But it's a huge, huge problem. It is the kind of problem where trying to circumvent it may be as gargantuan a task than facing it. I think the previous kind of problem and this one, to me, these are the sweet spot. The kind of calamity that befalls characters where you, as the audience, go, oh, I don't know how they're gonna get out of this. The previous one hits that stronger. I feel like it really nails that feeling. But this one right now, this kind of calamity, the one where there is enough leeway where people can argue about whether they should or should not face it, if they should just try to circumvent it. The kind of calamity that is, yes, it is dangerous, it is enormous, it is scary, but there is ways around it. And those alternative ways carry with them their own problems. That sensation that no matter what you do, you cannot win. The feeling that no matter what you do, you are most likely going to suffer a loss. There is no way for you to emerge out of this looking and feeling good. Something will be lost. Something will most likely be sacrificed. Or if anything, the party of adventurers, the friends, the lonely hero will put themselves at great danger. This kind of development is the kind that I love for those interconnected character moments. The kind of moment where you have the quiet character who's been following along, who finally puts their foot down and goes, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna do that. Trying to face that horrible, gargantuan threat is foolish. We should do this other thing. It may be as dangerous, but it is not as foolish. I like this other one as a nice chance for characters to argue. It hits that sweet spot. And I love how the audience, the reader, if you as the writer don't know how you're gonna get out of there, the audience is just wondering, thinking, trying to imagine how they get out of there. And I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again. If you as the writer don't know, if you as the writer look at this and go, how do they emerge out of this without just flat out taking a loss? I think the story I think the readers and viewers may share that feeling with you. Now, I know someone out there may be wondering, and yes, this is the kind of thing that when you revise the story, you make sure that everything works out, that everything makes sense, that nothing comes out of the blue. But that's part of writing. You're going to do that no matter what. Revision will come. But now in the act of writing, we want to keep writing, to stay inspired, to stay excited. And sometimes, when I think of the previous session, when I think of that calamity, when I think of these three scenarios, the worst possible thing -1, and the worst possible thing -2, I think to myself, how are they gonna get out of it? Sometimes all I need is a walk. I just need to go on a walk around my town, think about the story. And sometimes, without realizing it, I stumble upon a turn, a way in which the characters can tackle this. Not to emerge free of scrapes, free of scars and wounds, but in a way that makes the story fun, exciting to read. At the end of the day, what are we here for? To tell good stories. Remember that. It is very easy to forget about why we're walking when the journey feels so long. It's so easy to forget why when the backpack is so heavy and your feet hurt so much and the sun is so bright and hot. And it's hard and it gets harder. And then the climb begins and you wonder to yourself, why did I start this? Why did I set on this long journey? And I can only give you my answers. I love telling stories, and it is fun for me to be the first person experiencing that story. And I want it to be the best, and I want it to wow people. So sometimes when I find myself on that journey, hiking along unfamiliar paths with no map, and often no supplies, and I remind myself, I want to make good stories. And so, hello there, and welcome back to episode 34 of OMAKASE, my writing advice and inspiration podcast. I hope you had a good time. I had an amazing time recording this episode. It was so much fun. I have so much fun talking to you, and I hope that you also have fun listening. I hope that I inspired you today, or if anything, I got you to think about writing. I hope I was good company. And I want to believe, I want you, that from the time between now and the next time we meet, that you get some writing done. Okay? Okay. Also, my wife wrote right here, and I have to do as my wife said, because she's right. If I want the podcast to keep on growing, I have to tell people. If you really enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on iTunes. There you go. I just have to tell you, it's the kind of thing where, I'm bad at this. I'm bad at just telling people, hey, buy my stuff. Hey, review my stuff. Hey, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified of whenever. I'm really bad at that junk. But she is right. The podcast will only grow. And I put so much work into this, and I know someone out there probably needs to listen to this. If anything, just to help them realize that they're not alone in their struggle, that writing is hard, but that if they keep going, they will get to where they're meant to be. Okay? Okay. Alright. I did it again. Hey guys, I'm gonna jump over to the end of the video club, where I give a shout out to every single one of my patrons, and everybody treating me 2 cups of coffee. I'm gonna give a shout out to everyone, probably in a silly voice. If you are here for the inspirational advice, you're free to go. You can leave. If you like to think that I'm a cool person who's really cool, and I'm always inspirational, and I never make dumb jokes, feel free to leave right now, before I shatter your expectations. I make it sound... Okay, that sounded as though I'm gonna come out and be an even more inspirational person. I'll be like, hi there, welcome... Hi there, my name is M. Karen, and welcome to my TED Talk. Today, I'm gonna talk about changing your life through the power of fiction. Fiction. Hey guys. The power of fiction. It's the power of love. Alright. Oh, I'm showing my age now. Say back in my day, there was a movie titled Back to the Future, in which a young Michael J. Fox plays the character of Marty Mcfly. And he's going back in time to keep his parents together. No, he goes... No, he ends up going back in time by mistake. And he ends up basically ruining his timeline, and he has to kind of fix everything. That's what Back to the Future is about, in case you didn't know. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Hasn't aged the best. There's a couple of things in that movie that make no sense upon reflection. I know. Okay. Yes, I love Back to the Future. By the way, the shoutouts are starting now. You leave. Get out of here. I'm gonna give shoutouts now. But, then the thing that I never understood, and I don't mind it, I kind of like it, but I'm also biased. The movie never explains how Marty McFly became friends with Doc Brown. Like there's never a single line that explains how is it that this teenage boy who is into playing music and skateboarding and being cool and wearing flannel shirts and high-waisted jeans, how is it that he is friends with a scientist? I kind of like that, but I also understand that it makes no sense. I like it because I guess I'm nostalgic for the things that I grew up with. And I like, really, the best way to solve this is just to have one line. If there was one line in the movie that explained why, or an item in the background, I would be fine with it. But it is true. It's not very effective storytelling to have such a outlandish concept that is not at all explained in the movie. That right there is fair. So why was I talking? Oh yes, The Power of Love was the song that played in the movie. You see. Anyhow. I really do love Back to the Future. That is probably my favorite movie of all time. It has not aged well at all, though. Listen. That movie could probably use with more than 0 main female characters, I'll just tell you that right now. Oh no. Oh, welcome to my review of Back to the Future, originally released in 1985. So, probably, there's of course a clear, obvious lack of any kind of female representation in the movie, other than the character of Marty's mother, who, let's just make it very clear right now, the performance by that actress was fantastic. But overall, there really isn't much to her character. The story is actually pretty limited in the character department. Probably my favorite thing is how Marty McFly, who is supposedly he's supposed to be a cool teenager. He plays in a band, he wears cool shades, he has a flannel shirt. That's the epitome of coolness. And of course, he has a skateboard. And, he can talk to a girl. That right there, epitome of cool. I do love, though, that in the beginning of the movie, they show kind of the effect of how he was raised by his dad to be kind of nervous and self-conscious about what he creates in his art. And in the movie, there's very humanizing moments to Marty. In the beginning, he's talking about this tape that he made that has some songs that his band played, and how his girlfriend Jennifer wanted him to go send it to the radio station. And Marty echoes what you will later find out are the words of his father, saying that, how can I send them this? What if they hate it? What if they think I'm a failure? How can I handle that kind of rejection? And I found it to be very humanizing, because it's the idea of he's the cool 90s kid, except he's 80s, but whatever. He's the cool 80s kid, but he's still self-conscious. And part of that is because of the people who raised them. And also, I'm just realizing that Back to the Future is also about a writer, because Marty's dad happens to be a writer. Oh man, It's all coming back full circle. Welcome back to my movie review of Back to the Future. I'm your host, I'm Kieran. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more movie reviews. I am terrible. Hey Max, what's the best Back to the Future movie? Oh, by the way, I can hear you. Someone in the background is like, Max, just get to the shoutouts already. No, you're trapped in here with me. Welcome to Purgatory. The best Back to the Future movie is 2. Much like some video games nowadays contain the first game in there, Back to the Future 2 contains the first movie as well, so I think that Back to the Future 2 is a better movie than Back to the Future 1. Back to the Future 3... it's kind of a problem. I understand. It's kind of a novelty. I get it. I'm not a big fan of it. Mostly because the topic of the Old West has never appealed to me as much as the concept of the future. So there you go. Keep an eye out for more reviews of 80s movies. Was the Ninja Turtles movie 80s? Well, welcome back to Max. TMNT movie wiki. Was that movie the old TMNT movie? 1990, the original. It was basically an indie film, wasn't it? Yeah. Lean, green, and on the screen everywhere. That's a terrible slogan for a movie. Really, when you think about the pinnacles of the medium, I like to think of in regards to film. The pinnacles of the medium, of course, Back to the Future, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 2, Revenge of the Ooze? Is it titled Revenge of the Ooze? TMNT 2 Wiki. No, The Secret of the Ooze! That's the one. And now it's time for the traditional pre-fight donut. There you go. The other day, my wife and I don't know why, I think for some reason we started talking about Vanilla Ice, and then she just started singing Go Ninja Go. She's never seen the movie. She's never listened to Vanilla Ice. Really, who has? But she knows the Go Ninja Go song. Because of course she does. She's married to me. She just gets that stuff through osmosis. Anyhow, let's start with the shoutouts. Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go Ninja. M. Kieran's Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go remix, 24 hours. Like, comment, and subscribe. Anyhow. Can you tell this is the first podcast I'm recording today? I wanted to get this one out so that I could get all of the nonsense out of me, so that I can record a serious video after this. Alright, enough of this nonsense. I want to give a big shout out to Hero Song, Rival Moonlight, Soul Muse, Lishadra, Lacey, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Angela, Polly Craftool, Amelia, Alyssa Dudley. Alyssa Dudley. I'm not making fun of your name, I'm making fun of my own pronunciation of your name. Heather is writing. Nicola! Brenda. Pat Eichson. Kristen Lofton. Synexia. Alex Cast. Alistair Baywood. I forgot to charge the Alistair Baywood. It's Alistair Baywood. Caitlin. Blarg! Kamishore Rao Shalari. Kathy Lindsay. Kaylee. Mary Foster Smith. Juan Nunes. Christine Dennis. Raquel Fernandez. Alexo Hoshi. Sylvia Leitilla. Janosch Hebutsky. Sky D. White. Eleanor. Renee Solia. Connor. Jay Suwiki. This is such a dumb joke. I always feel like the way in which the phonetics work out for Jay Suwiki, I feel like I'm making the automatopoeia for a DJ like scratch table. Is that what they're called? Like Jay Suwiki wiki wiki wiki. There you go. That's such a terrible bit. Rhiannon August. Nicolay. J. Tana Kirkwood. James. Erasos! Erasos is in all caps and has 3 exclamation marks. I have to point that out. That's why I have to really bring out the anime in me. Wendy Christopher. Noam Sahar. Novels and Tomes. Kiel. Roa. Lear Killo. Clem Pastor. Nicole Grissom. Biting the Sun. Christiane. Shimmer Tales. Amanda Stevens. Joffrey Raby. C.E. Richards. Jeffrey James Williams. And, because I sorted these in a different order, last but by no means least, with a Patreon support of over 11 months, K.M. Anderson. K.M. Anderson. K.M. Anderson. K.M. Anderson. K.M. Anderson. Yes, oh yes, thank you so much for your support, everybody. I'm so old talking about my 80s movies. Oh, no one mentioned the fact that Back to the Future was first released almost 40 years ago. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God, it was almost 40 years ago. Oh God. Oh God. Oh man, it's settling in. I'm so old. Thank you so much for listening to my Writing Advice podcast. The name's been M. Kieran. And I hope you enjoyed the silly part of the podcast. I always like to lighten things up. I also like to commit to bits that are not funny, just for the sake of trying to hope that maybe it'll become funny down the line. Anyhow, hey there. You're cool. You're fun. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. And I hope that between now and the next time we meet, that you have some fun. Take care of yourself, okay? Life is hard. If you cannot find the time to write, that's okay. You gotta take care of the writer to take care of that writing. I hope I was good company. And I hope to see you on the next one.